But yeah, it's sad. We're getting further away from the Blade Runner aesthetic that I love so dear, that I hold so close to my heart.
Wow.
Hello and welcome to the Abroad in Japan podcast. Probably the best way of learning about life in Japan without actually being physically, literally in Japan. I'm your host, Chris Braun, and we're joined as always by England's top Japan enthusiast, Mr. PeteDawson.com. Pete, how the devil are you doing? What's going on in your life? Monster energy, I hope.
Welcome to the Abroad in Japan podcast, the best way of learning about life in Japan without actually being in Japan. I'm Pete Donaldson, your host, and I'm joined by Chris Broad, who's not very well at the moment. And Chris, at the start of this show, said, Pete, I'm not very well at the moment. Can you do the intro? And then I couldn't do the intro because I couldn't remember what actually Chris said. Turns out I could remember what Chris said, and everything would have been fine. But yeah, Chris isn't very well, unfortunately. He's a poorly boy, and he's not looking after himself, and he's editing too many videos, and he's doing too much travelling, and he's not got time. He's busy promoing his new Sakura mate Sakura Nico flavoured Abroad in Japan book, his nice red one with a nice red cover, brand new for the autumn, the Spice Latte generation, and he's just not looking after himself. So I would like to get the Abroad in Japan fan base, listeners, viewers, to please email the Abroad in Japan podcast email address, which is abroadinjapanpodcast@gmail.com, telling Chris to get better, rest up, and stop working so bloody hard. Because he needs to look after himself. You need to look after yourself. And the problem is, Chris, if I'm ill, I've got Sudafed at my fingertips.
Oh,
we've spoken about
proper drugs.
Crank. We've spoken about proper good old, Trump's a fan, European Sudafed, absolutely strong as hell, which you can't get in Japan. Pseudoephedrine, all that stuff you can't get. And so Chris is just having to deal with a little poorly man flu with just, I don't know, coffee and donuts and chips and shoes. And I don't know what he's eating or drinking, but he's not very well. I
had gyutan for lunch, cow tongue, beef tongue. It was really good, actually. It had soup and nice, like mochi, sticky rice. And this is my drink, the Tully's coffee, of course.
You need some chicken soup. You need some good chicken soup. You need to find like a Jewish neighbourhood and you get some beautiful chicken soup down here. Or you need to find yourself some Chinese congee, some frog leg congee, and get that down here. That's what's that'll be good for what ails you.
I'll be all right. I mean, it's been a brutal year in general. This year's been worse than most for workload, promoting books and bars and doing all sorts. I feel like sometimes this year I've done like I should have just stuck to the videos, but it's actually we've hit the 3-month anniversary of Lost Bar over in Shibuya, and it's going very well. It's a really nice thing. Every day when I'm not there, if I'm not about, I'll get messages from people saying, I swung by the bar, it was good. We've got a really nice cocktail this month called like Pink Grapefruit Perfection, PGP. Sounds very clinical, but it's one of the best cocktails we've ever made. So it's been kind of cool. I can't do all this stuff and then be a bit whiny when I get a bit ill once in a while. It's the way it is. I always said though, until the age of 35, I would push myself to the brink of my sort of physical, mental sanity. And I've done that very well over the last few years. I've been to the brink, and I've seen what's on the other side. And certainly next year...
It's just a delicious
skeleton. It's not a fucking buffet. You make it sound like a fucking free-course buffet.
I'm hungry. It's 6 a.m. here. I'm hungry.
What's on the other side? Fried chicken, courgettes, scampi.
I've got a breakfast burrito on the mind, Chris. I can't help myself.
But no, my life is... It is pretty relentless. I don't think people probably don't realise all the stuff I do because a lot of it's not really public, is it? I'm doing podcasts a few times a week. I've got videos on scripting, editing,
Japanese
shooting.
Spy.
I'm a Japanese spy. Who can't speak Japanese that fluently. The worst Japanese spy, one might say. Did you get a look at the transcript of the weapons, Chris? Yeah, it said I couldn't read the kanji. It said something about orbital weapon system, but it could have been about a tree.
I was expecting a diagram of the gun, but I didn't put one in. It was only bloody Japanese, wasn't it?
That would be a really good show about somebody who professes to be bilingual and then isn't. I remember working with somebody at one of the companies I've done stuff with. They hired somebody who was absolutely, for lack of a better word, fucking shit at their job. They were appalling. They'd said they were bilingual. They were not bilingual. They could not speak English, and that was like the most important thing their job required of them. I think they were Chinese, Japanese person, and claimed to be Canadian or something, but they definitely weren't Canadian. Anyway, they cocked up big time everything. We did a shoot. I came in for a shoot for this project, and it wasn't on Abroad Japan. It was something else, and they hit the record button and they forgot to charge the battery, and the camera died after 10 seconds. And this is a few years ago. I travelled all the way from Sendai to Tokyo, was doing this thing. They hit record. I forgot to charge the battery, and then they fell over and hit an urn containing the ashes of a whole dead family. And that went all over the floor of this Airbnb that had been rented out for this shoot. And it was I don't remember how this conversation started, but so bilingual spy could be fun. Who's not bilingual?
I mean, if you are going to rent out an Airbnb, don't leave your ashes kicking around. I would say that's
so bad. The one thing not to do on a shoot when you're filming in a Japanese house or temple is knock over the urn with the ashes and bones of the deceased people. Oh, the one thing. Anyway, they knocked that over. I think
10 things. Put that in your 10 things not to do. 10 things not to do in Japan. Do not tip over an urn with dead people in it. Okay, cool, fine.
It got so bad that I had to tell this company, I can't work with you again unless you have a cameraman who has cameraman experience and speaks English and doesn't knock over priceless family heirlooms. And I think the company quickly realised their mistake. My God. But so it's been a busy old year in general, and there's always something going on. Like tomorrow, I'm off to Okinawa for a wacky weekend. What could possibly go
You sound
wrong?
like you're up for it, mate. Good, a wacky weekend is happening. Good.
I think I'll be all right. I'll be all right. I'm through the other side of this.
You'll be fine.
Yeah. And then I come back, and then I go to Hokkaido to shoot a town that got eradicated by a volcano. And then I come back, and I go to Kyushu, and I film a mountain that exploded. And then I come back, and then you're here, and then things really go downhill. And in the next 3 weeks, I'm going to die. I'm going Okinawa, Hokkaido, Kyushu, wherever the fuck you want to go. It's going to be a nightmare.
I love those beautiful funeral homes they have in Japan. I can't wait to be
smash
viewing
the
your
urns.
body. Yeah, I'm knocking over your ashes by Christmas.
Yeah, probably.
Oh dear. There is something to be said, Chris, for I think they call it Doctor Theatre. As soon as you get in front of that camera, though, you're just kind of fixed for a couple of hours, and then you can kind of relax. So maybe sort of having that kind of singular focus. If you were ill and you're just rolling around your house going, "Oh, I'm dying," it's rubbish. But if you've got a job to do and you don't feel very well, sometimes the kind of camaraderie and the excitement of doing something a little bit different it can get you through. I think, is that fair to say?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I did a shoot the other day. I had 5 hours sleep. But you get that adrenaline rush when the record button gets hit. You hit the ground running like a magic power. It does wear off very quickly after 2 hours. Not even Monster Energy can save me at that point. But it is what it is. I can't sit here and whinge. I love what I do, and even though I live a ridiculous lifestyle, it's a joke, and my calendars are. It really annoys me when someone I have friends who are like, I'm too busy to do this, or I'm too busy to do that. When I ask them if we want to do something. And then I'm like, I'm busy as well, but I don't use it as I don't bring that out. I'm like, I'm busy as well doing 500 things. It annoys me when that happens.
Yeah.
But I love what I do, and I think as long as you enjoy what you do, you will do crazy hours. You will be up till 4 a.m. You will make no time for sitting in a room reading a book. You will work 7 days a week without question, without fail, and that is. I've noticed. I'm friends with a lot of business leader, entrepreneurial people that run their own companies. And it kind of helps to be in that group of people when you're doing that yourself, because you see the insane hours they're doing, and it kind of helps you to appreciate things, and it sort of normalizes the insanity of what it can be like being your own boss, right? As you are yourself. You run some companies.
And you're very, and you know, you're out there. You know, you're very kind of visual. People know who you are. So
visual.
That is how you get the ladies. These entrepreneurs aren't getting the ladies.
I was walking through like Shibuya the other day, and I had like my headphones in. I was listening to some music, walking somewhere, and there was a guy, I think Asian American dude, just drinking some Pocari Sweat by a vending machine, and he mid sip he looked up and saw me and went "Roar!" and sort of pointed
Into
at
his
me.
Pocari Sweat.
Yeah, and sort of pointed at me, and I went. Yeah, that's me. Yeah. And he was like, "Wow!" And then he like stopped drinking and just ran off down the street. It was like, what an interaction! This is
What was he going to get? Going to get his gun.
I don't know what he was going to do, but
going to get Johnny Somali. I'm friends with Johnny Somali.
Fucking Johnny Somali. He left a comment actually after we talked about Johnny Somali on this podcast last week. He left another comment on the bar, being like, "I'm still coming to your bar." Good luck with that, because it sounds like South Korea doesn't want to let him out.
I said when you WhatsApp me that, I said, fair play, that is a good joke. Just constantly saying he's coming to the bar. I would say that he's not leaving Korea for a little while. He's been too naughty.
Yeah,
naughty boy.
Tipping your bowl of ramen all over the counter of a convenience store probably deserves significant punishment amongst other things. So, what a dickhead, honestly.
What a dickhead.
It's weird knowing he watched this. And we sort of asked the hypothetical question, why are you such a fucking idiot? And he didn't answer that. I would like to know, if you're watching this, what drives you, Johnny Somali? Why are you a dickhead? Why can't you just be like, I could do good things. I could go around the world and be a force for good. No.
Someone in the comments did compare him to Andy Kaufman, and I will take umbrage with that. I will take umbrage with that.
No.
Because like Kaufman was this outsider artist who kind of was uncompromising with. Nah,
Don't make the parallel.
Idiot, he's just a fucking idiot, mate. He's just one of those stunty YouTubers that thinks the world owes him a dime, and he's just an idiot.
Yeah, in a nutshell, yes. We got a story this week though from Anna, who is nice, and it begins: "Hello, Chris and Pete. I'm just back home from my trip to Japan, where I had a lovely visit in Hakone. I was at Odawara Station, which is the station you get off at to go to Hakone, mulling over my itinerary, when a middle-aged Japanese man started to talk to me. Since I was wrapped up in my thoughts, I didn't catch his preamble, but heard him ask me, 'Cold or hot?' Confused and not fully processing what was happening, I just parroted back to him, 'Hot.' 'Stay there,' he said, and walked off. I shrugged internally, thinking he was probably one of those harmless, strange characters you often meet while in transit. And I went back to going on my iPhone. A few minutes later, he appeared again, holding a 7-Eleven bag with a hot coffee and some buttered toast. I couldn't believe it, but it was very grateful. He tried to talk to me, but my Japanese isn't so good, so he started feeding the pigeons who were congregating, having spotted the toast. He had a favourite, Orcar-san, the pigeon, who he threw the bread to, and cursed when the other pigeons beat her to the mouthful. Oh, fuck. Turns out that wasn't the only thing in the bag. Along with some pastries, he also had some beers, a can of which he probably opened and started drinking.
There we go.
Oh my God.
I love the eccentricity, and you're sort of going, oh, it's just such an authentic Japanese experience. You know, he's such a, you know, I'm so happy that I met. Oh, he's drunk. He's pissed. He's pissed.
Well, he opened his can of beer and he started drinking. And I thought at this point I should probably bail and decided to escape to Beck's coffee shop, which had just opened. When I emerged from the coffee shop later, the beer, the pigeons, and the man had all gone. That was my experience with Pigeon Man in Odawara Station. All the best, Anna. He imagined an encounter with Pigeon Man. It's from jet lag, isn't it? Jet lag.
Like Home Alone, isn't it?
It is a bit, yeah. You plagiarised that from Home Alone. Have you experienced Pigeon Man, Pete?
That's love. No, I've never experienced Pigeon Man. I've experienced many pigeons. The pigeons in Sapporo were very not aggressive, but they were very. I'm going to say busy fuckers, because like the weird thing about the thing about Japan is there are big old crows everywhere, and seemingly the pigeons just get on with the crows, and the crows, the black crows, just who are just constantly going rah, which is just frightening. They just seem to get on the pigeons. I thought they would have an issue. I know they're not technically birds of prey, but they're big old fuckers, aren't they?
It's all that ramen, all that miso ramen and Genghis Khan lamb mutton barbecue. Last time I was in Sapporo, I was sitting on a bench while Natsuki went off to have some cigarettes, and a woman came over and she started feeding the pigeons, and then she tried to induct me into some sort of cult. She gave me like a pamphlet that was in perfect English about how the leader of Jesus and everything, and like Father Christmas, was going to save me and be my salvation for 2,000 yen if I wanted to join her that afternoon. It was very weird, and the pamphlet went in the bin very quickly. But I do find if you're a foreign person sitting alone in a city, on a bench in a park, there's a good chance you will get some interesting characters come say hello. So do it. We should do that when you're over here. You'll sit like one end of the park, and I'll just film you on a 200mm lens and see what happens.
Yeah. The pigeon man of Yoyogi Park. Lovely. I wouldn't mind it. Drinking a 1-cup sake at Yoyogi Park always reminds me of drinking 1 cup sake. I don't know why. Well, because I did it. That's why.
Awful.
Just remembered.
Awful.
Awful situation.
But Japan is set to see some changes to its skyline in the coming years. Tell us about what's going on, Pete, and why Japan could look very different in the next 2 to 3 years.
Well, if you take a picture in Japan, you're going to see two things. Maybe a pigeon, but also a load of tangled power lines. Basically, any city street in like, I'm saying, like, in my mind, I'm thinking Osaka is a big one for this.
Yes.
Really urban scenes, but with loads of like big, chunky, confusing power lines everywhere. There are just... Basically, the power lines are everywhere in the sky. They blot out a lot of the sky when you look up in any street in Tokyo or Osaka or the cities. Back in 2017, part of the Ministry of Land, Infrastructure, Transport and Tourism's movement for scenic urban renewal, tried to do their best to remove a lot of these unsightly electrical cables that basically disrupted the natural kind of like cool old school kind of feel of a lot of these towns, but like it's a real kind of like I think it's quintessentially Japanese as well. I think when you take a picture in a city, there are just power lines everywhere. I don't think they run them under the ground. Presumably, they're all off poles and stuff. So back in 2017, they decided to make a big change, and by 2021, all of the utility poles along a lot of the streets in Hyogo Prefecture had been removed, and presumably they started just putting them under the ground. I don't know where you would sort of put power lines if you kind of move them, but Tokyo is spending a lot of time and a lot of money removing a lot of these kind of like wiry, like it reminds me of sort of a lot of Taiwan, a lot of China have these kind of like overhead kind of like power lines that kind of like dot they go from building to building in the major cities and stuff. But Tokyo is trying to become a wire-free city. It's going to take a very, very long time, but the Ministry of Land, the Infrastructure, Transport and Tourism have announced a new plan to eliminate 4,000 kilometres of overhead power cables by 2025, which, to be honest, as these kind of infrastructure projects go, I mean, that's quite a short period of time, really. We're in the business end of 2024, but they're looking to remove quite a few kilometres of power cables by 2025. I mean, I presume that they're going to go underground. I presume that will present different problems for a very watery
Put them in space.
Japan.
Space.
I guess so. Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. But are power lines part of the kind of just general vibe of an eastern sort of cityscape, or is this kind of could we do with removing a few of them just to make our streets just a little less 60 hertz or 50 hertz hummy?
I wonder. I mean, I was filming at a beach house like yesterday, actually, near Enoshima, beautiful area. And the beach house was outstanding. It had this view of Enoshima Island, and it was magical. But there was a big fucking 50 million watt transformer unit and power cables blocking the entire view, and it sort of ruined the view. It was a real problem, and so I'm all for this. I do think there is a nice charm to the cables. I like it in, as you say, Osaka, those gritty back alleyways where we filmed.
Namba.
Namba. It's kind of like. It is really cool, the cables and air conditioning units. I mean, that's what inspired this studio, right? That kind of vibe. Yeah. But it is also quite annoying. And I think it's a good idea. When I interviewed the governor of Tokyo, Koike, She said that's something they really want to do. They really want to get rid of all those cables, and I think it's a good thing. And the towns that do it are typically either historic towns, like the Nakasendo Trail and the old post towns, where it sort of doesn't feel like the 16th century when you've got 25 telephone cables going above you. And also towns where there's festivals with floats, because they can't carry the floats down the street right, because they just get tangled in the cables. So I'm all for it, but I think people will be sad. People love taking photos of streets in Japan on Instagram, dusk, sun going up, down.
Where will the crows live? Where will the crows sit?
I know, right?
For crying out loud.
A million crows will die, but at least the sky will be visible once again. So, interesting idea there. It'd be interesting to see this actually pulled off in the coming years. But it's sad. We're getting further away from the Blade Runner aesthetic that I love so dear, that I hold so close to my heart. And
do you ever get kind of like, if you're using microphones and cameras and stuff, do you ever get like a bit of interference from the really strong sort of power cables not that far away from you?
No, because you have to be like touching the cable. You have to be really close to it for that to happen, right?
Right.
Like practically touching the cable to. We had it here, didn't we? We had it here. The cable that connects this microphone went near the transformer that like keeps the lights on here, and we got a nasty hum. But when you're just walking down the street, it's fine. It's not a problem. Yeah. So, good idea though. Good idea.
Yeah, let's get rid of those blooming wires, for crying out loud, and sod the crows.
Sod the crows. Get rid of the wires. We'll be back in just a moment, guys, with your stories, comments and questions over in the fax machine.
Wow.
And we're back with the fax machine. What have we got this week from our listeners? Mr. Donaldson, fill us in.
We've got a message from, let me just click through the little button. Hi, Chris and Pete, this is Nicola. I travelled to Japan this year and stayed for a month and a half. One thing that really shocked me was that the women-owned carriages on the metro in Tokyo and Osaka, the carriages seemed to be indicated by sections on the platform, yet during my time there, I saw men entering these carriages seemingly with no problem. Do you know how or when this rule is enforced? Will be interesting to hear. Kind regards, Nicola. It's usually just rush hour, isn't it?
I think there's certain times... Yeah, there's certain times men are allowed on the train carriage, to be fair.
Right.
They do abide it, though, in Japan. They are pretty good about it.
Yeah.
Just be careful. It's a good idea, though, to have that, given all the awful shit that goes on trains, busy trains, So it's a good idea. But, it's only certain hours, I believe, last time I checked. So bear that in mind. It usually says on the side of the train carriage or on the floor with the stickers where it says like women only. So keep an eye out for that. We got to
follow other people. Yeah,
do that. We got a question from Chris who says, "Salutations, Chris and Pete. As somebody who has an interest in martial arts, I'd like to watch some sumo wrestling during a visit to Japan. I was wondering if you guys could shed any light upon how ingrained in the zeitgeist the sport currently is, and if you've ever been. Best wishes, guys, Chris Williams." Neither Pete nor I have ever been, and
no.
It's a shame. I'd like to go. I missed the chance to go about 2 years ago. A friend invited me, but I was busy, and I've regretted that ever since because I really do want to see it. But for the most part, I've never met someone in 12 years who's gone, "Oh, I love sumo, let's go," and that's part of the reason why. It's a rare thing.
I'm taking you to some. I'm taking you to some wrestling, proper wrestling.
You
I call
are,
it.
yeah, proper wrestling.
At some point, we're trying to get to a DDT show, which is like this sort of comedy, but very good wrestling outfit. But unfortunately, they're not doing shows, so the timings don't work. But I found one that's got an interesting kind of like a boozy event space where there should be some fun stuff going on. So we'll see how we go. We'll dip in there. We'll dip in there in Pallet Town or wherever it is.
I think that'd be lovely.
Yeah, smashing.
It's all about the company, right? I want to go with somebody who's enthusiastic and loves it, and you're the only one I know who does. So it's fitting.
That's the thing. That's the thing about like we're not talking about sumo wrestling, but we're talking about wrestling here. Like I do a podcast called Wrestle Me. Again, I think on the last show I was advertising more Stack podcast, but I do a show called Wrestle Me. Now my mate, I didn't know anything about wrestling about 4 years ago, and I wasn't a fan, and I never grew up watching Hulk Hogan's and Ultimate Warriors and stuff. But my friend. Did do. He's been a lifelong fan, and he's a comedy writer. He's a funny guy, and going to wrestling with him. And him explaining kind of what's going on and also who these characters are and why they're important, why people are getting excited about certain older wrestlers returning and stuff. It's really useful. But so now I can kind of figure out what's going on. It's been a hell of a 5 years, but I do understand the importance to Japanese society and Japanese pride post World War II. How important wrestling was for them. Seeing these Japanese stars kicking shit out of the Americans was important for their pathos and their, getting back on their feet, I think. Wrestling and obviously sumo wrestling is a much more old sport in Japanese culture, but American sort of professional wrestling, as they call it, is really, really important too. And the kind of like divide of people who sort of attend these kind of matches, it's just absolutely fascinating. So yeah, it's an interesting part of the culture, and I'm really looking forward to dating you.
Yeah, it's sort of an art form, isn't it? I put it along with the arts in general, as opposed to sort of straight up sporty fighting. Yeah, because there's a lot of performance involved, and doesn't seem to be overly competitive, right? It's more about that performance, isn't it? So
it's the razzle dazzle, baby. Yeah,
in it. Can't wait for that though. It should be good. I'm looking forward to it genuinely after all this years doing it. So it should be kind of cool. Pete Donaldson is coming to Japan in 2 weeks away now or something. So
yeah,
crikey! If you're in Japan,
where did this year go?
Yeah,
where did this year go?
It has felt like a weird year. It has gone sort of quick. I remember this time last year, I was gearing up for the insanity of Journey Across Japan, non-stop north, and I was like, breaking point. I kind of feel a bit sad because I love to end each year on a big project and something that consumes me, and I haven't really got that yet. So I'm kind of finding something still to end the year on a high note. And maybe that could be your trip. Maybe that could be our little adventure to go and see some weird things in Japan. But I'm looking forward to it. It'll be fun. It'll be a good few days.
Yeah. And, little project, looking after me. That is the biggest project you'll ever take on, looking after Pete Donaldson.
It's a tough job. Somebody's got to do it. And also, but I did speak to Natsuki, and he might be free those 3 days to join us.
Whoa.
Which
fantastic.
Could make me gonna die. I don't know how the fuck I'm going to keep up with you, man.
I mean, that is two toddlers running around being silly, isn't it? I mean, that is...
It's stressful.
In big trouble, buddy.
It's going to be a nightmare.
He likes wrestling. He's completely unprompted.
Yeah.
Natsuki's a big Stan Hansen fan, the Texan from back in the day.
Maybe we should get him along as well. But more on that though. I guess next week we'll talk about what you guys have recommended. I wanted to do it this week, but sorry, I've been a bit not great, not well. But we'll dive into that next week, guys. Very exciting few weeks ahead with the return of the king, Mr. Donaldson himself. Keep the stories, questions, comments coming in to abroadjapanpodcast@gmail.com or right away in the YouTube comments below. But for now, have yourselves a great few days, and we'll see you right back here to do it all over again on the Abroad Japan Podcast. Bye for now.
Rest up, Chris. Get well soon.
I will. We say in Japanese, o daiji ni.